Well, hello, Catherine. Welcome to the show. I am so glad that you're here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And the book itself is amazing. Like I was saying before, I feel so lucky to have you on the show to share your wisdom with my audience. Why was this book so important for you to put out into the world? Was it just a cathartic process of healing for yourself, or did you actually intend for it to be a balm for others?
Yeah, I think it was really that I wanted to give something to other people. So I just kind of reached a point in my life when I realized I had a kind of expertise in wintering, as I call it, which is these times of life where you fall through the cracks and feel like life is carrying on without you, I suppose. And I just, sometimes you have these moments of clarity when you join the dots between, for me, all the moments that I'd wintered, but also all the moments that my friends were wintering at the time and had wintered in the past. And yeah, I suppose I thought, we don't talk about this. We don't have a modality for getting through it. We don't acknowledge it as normal. We actually, in fact, do the opposite. We make every single person going through every single crisis feel like they've uniquely failed. And I just wanted to create something that gave that language and that perspective, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, and it does exactly that, through your own personal story, your journey. Um, I just, why do you think, going back to what you just said, why do you think it's so shameful, this process of wintering, this process where you feel just completely out of sorts, like you have failed in some way?
Mm.
Why are we ashamed? And why is it on that, on us in that way?
We just don't have a narrative about that, really. Not in current society. I mean, I think actually we used to have more of a way of talking about it. I mean, when you look at our folklore, when you look at our religious stories, we probably talked about that much more cyclical way of living in great depth, actually. But the 20th century, we've changed a lot, haven't we? We've started thinking about success in very straightforward terms, and about this idea of lives that go from 0 to 100 in this kind of perfect upward slope. And we've lost this really delicate, important dialogue about the times when everything's failing. And, we think that we've pushed a load of things back. We think that we've pushed illness back. We think that we've pushed death back. We think that we can read the right book to make sure that we get through every life phase perfectly. It's great to talk about this on a blog with Motherhood,
Yeah.
podcast with Motherhood in the title, because actually I felt that very strongly when I first became a mother, that there was like supposed to be a method for me to get this right, and I couldn't get it right. And actually, the failing is the important bit, I think.
Mm.
That's where we find our humanity, that's where we find our compassion, and it's where we find our way through, our personal way through. I think that's vital, actually.
Yeah, and I just got chills when you were saying that because it is like in those slowed down moments where we almost can't breathe sometimes, that it's like you
Mm,
get these insights that you never would have gotten if everything
mm.
was going so well and so perfectly. It's almost like shock therapy, but I love the way that you have framed it in that it's actually it's the best medicine that we can have in that moment. And the part about motherhood is just so spot on. I think for me, like that's when I really came to know myself and came to question everything that I previously thought about myself before when,
Mm.
I'm up late at night with this baby thinking I'm doing it wrong and failing and the
Yeah,
marriage is falling apart and everything else because you're just in this totally different realm.
absolutely. And, for me, I think motherhood was the first time I came across a challenge that I couldn't get on top of, but I also couldn't duck out of. And that's a moment, isn't it? That moment when you think, oh, whoa, I've got to see this through, even when it's awful.
Yes.
Nobody says to you, like, nobody says your baby's going to wake in the night. Whatever the hell you do, your baby is going to wake in the night. There is no method that's going to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
Your baby's going to go on crying jags that you can't solve sometimes. Like all of that stuff, we have just lost the ability to say, there are bits of this that suck very badly, and that's part of the job, that's part of the mother work that we do. And you will look back on it one day and laugh a little bit, but also maybe feel, yeah, still not there, still not ready.
It's still too fresh.
Well, I mean, I only had the one because I just couldn't ever face it again.
Right. No, I get it.
But actually, I'm so careful about the way I talk to other women about motherhood now as well, to open up that space for them, particularly when they've got tiny babies, to say, oh, this is horrible at the moment. And it's like we've lost the subtlety of thought to be able to
Mm.
love someone intensely and want to do absolutely the right thing for them and to be hating it at the same time. Like, we can hold both of those things. We're big enough for that. We can do that. We need to trust women more.
Yes, and to understand that that's not a bad thing. It's okay to be like, this is not okay, and not okay in this moment. Like,
Yeah.
that's okay. I love that you just said that. But
It's
it
really
kind of makes
important,
me,
I think.
yeah, like it makes me think of this one other line from the book. I had to write it down because I loved it so much. It said, the problem with everything is often it looks a lot like nothing. You're talking about the busyness that we're all experiencing and that we were all experiencing really pre-COVID. So, what did you learn about slowing down, about centering, in the midst of everyone else just being busy? And what can we get from that?
Yeah, well, I spent years in a huge rush, really, just trying to get everything done and to be everything. I wanted to be seen as important in my job. I wanted to be seen as competent at the very least, but I wanted to be more than competent. And I wanted to get great satisfaction from that. I obviously also wanted to have a great home life. There were so many things that I was trying to do, and I was throwing myself at the world endlessly. And actually, I got to the point where I had to stop. Like, stopping for me was not a choice. My
Yeah.
health just collapsed underneath me, mental and physical, both at the same time. And by the time I got to the doctor, and because like I had these big kind of gut health problems, they said that I had the gut of a 75-year-old. I
Wow.
was 40. And that was a wake-up call. That was the work of stress in my life.
Mm.
And when I looked back over that time when I'd been so busy and striving so hard to be everything, it was just a blur. It was just this one big sense of panic and rush and no pleasure. And slowing down for me, did not come easy. It did not come willingly. But actually, I would never go back to that life now. I just relish my time and space to think, to be, to breathe, and to be well. I just, what am I if I'm not well? What do I
Mm.
have if I don't have my health? That's something that's really worth fighting for. And I mean, a few years on, this was not my immediate thought, but now I really strongly feel that we all need to start imagining lives that allow us to be well and happy and calm. Like, calm is possible. We are allowed to feel calm and content. That won't stop all those other crises coming, but we can imagine our working lives. It is possible to do this in another way. And I had to be taught that very forcibly, but I would not ever go back to working full time, which of course is many more hours than full time,
Right.
in a high stress job. It's not worth the trade off for the years that you lose to it.
Why do you think we put ourselves in these positions? Is it ego? Is it our parents? Is it society at large? Why do we feel like we have to do it, especially as women, and have it
Mm,
all and have the perfect home and the life and then have, be killing it at work and just
yeah.
get all the accolades? Because, I mean, we have the ability to do it, right? Like
Mm.
we have the ability to be super overachievers, but why do we feel like we have to?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think it's different for everybody, maybe. For me, it actually hit home after I became a mother. In fact, I mean, before I had my son, I worked in quite a laid back way. I was always freelance. I always did the work I wanted to do. I always took time off for creative work. And it was only after my son came along that I felt this sense of urgency to, I think I'd felt so kind of pushed out of the world when he was tiny that I had to kind of elbow my way back in again.
Mm.
I felt like I'd lost ground. I felt very worried about money. I felt like I needed to guarantee him a better life. In fact, the job that very nearly finished me off, I went into saying, like, I need financial security, I've got
Mm.
to have a pension, I need savings, I need to make sure I can pay off a mortgage at some point. And it was almost part of my nesting instinct in a strange kind of way. Like, I wanted to provide and make
Mhm.
everything safe. And I know that sounds counterintuitive given what I've just said about the effect it had on me, but it's like a kind of thwarted instinct to sort
Yeah.
everything out, isn't it? And to look after everybody. But also, yeah, I didn't want to lose my footing in the world. I think I felt so isolated in those early days with a tiny child at home that I kind of wanted to force my way back into the world of people talking about interesting things and doing stuff and achieving stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. To
it
feel
didn't
connected to who you were before, maybe.
actually to I think I was trying to be better than I was before. I think I look back on those times and thought I'd maybe wasted years of, and now I look back and think, no, I had it right at that
Yeah.
point. It was only afterwards. But it was a kind of panic. Yeah, it really was. It was a fear that I wasn't enough and that I'd
Mm.
never be enough again. And that was it for me. Like, I was just going to go to waste somehow.
You just saying that, I think, took off a weight of so many women listeners to this right now, because all of us have had that feeling. All of us,
Mm,
especially with the first one that you bring home, like, you don't know what's going on, who you
yeah.
are even anymore, what
Yes.
you want. And then, yes, of course, you want to do the best you can for these children,
Mm.
whatever that means. You're just going to plow through. And how long was it before, you noticed that you needed to change the way that you were going? How many years had it been?
Oh man, I mean, 6 years, maybe 5 or 6 years. It was a long time. It was really, I, I just, every time I felt that stuff was going wrong, I accelerated rather than
Mm.
decelerated. And I think, I looked around me and I felt like other women were so content with less. I met so many mothers who said, "Oh, I'm so relieved to be out of work now that I don't have to go back." And I mean, we could never have afforded for me not to work anyway. That was not an option in our family. But I wanted the opposite of that. I wanted to go back and to feel worthy and to feel like I was something, because I didn't feel like I was ever going to be mother of the year. I thought I could be a good enough mother, and maybe I could be a really good professional at the same time. But yeah, it took me a long time to really be able to come to terms with not being able to do that, actually, in complete truth. And that's hard because some people seem very content doing that and very able to do it, but yeah, that's life, isn't it? Sometimes knowing that you're not the top of that pile.
Yeah, but I think, do they really think that they're doing it all? Even the people who seem like they
Mm,
have it all together, when you really peel back the layers, I mean, maybe there's just zero self-awareness going on. Maybe they are just plowing through day in and day out, or maybe, I don't know. It's hard to say until you really, peer behind the veil.
mm. I
But
think when you look at people that really cope, they have a lot of help, actually,
yes,
as well. And that's great. I couldn't afford the level of help that I'd have needed to cope, but I have a very good friend who's very successful, and she has like a mother's aide who comes in the morning. It's actually called a mother's aide, which seems quite dated now. I don't know what that means for like the men in the household, but who comes in and like sorts the house out for a couple of hours every morning.
Mhm.
And all of those things I think can mean that you can cope, but I was not in that financial position by any means. And so, you're doing all the housework at the weekend as well. It's just exhausting. We were
Yeah,
not ever made to do 24 hours a day working, and
yeah,
to be scheduling our lives in the way that we schedule them. I was reading some interesting research about very ancient families, like way back in our ancestral past. And, we tend to think of those people as having to constantly work to keep food on the table. But actually, they rested for most of the day. They spent a lot of their time at leisure, just hanging out, just drifting around. Like the hunting and the gathering took up very small amounts of time in their day, and they didn't work past what they needed. So they would have enough to eat, and then they'd have a rest and hang out and enjoy themselves.
yeah.
And I think we think that we're made to do the opposite. And I'm not sure that's true. I think we lose such a lot when we don't rest and we don't like kick back and laugh,
Hmm.
actually. Mm.
Yes, yes, and let our spirits just kind of intertwine with each other's. And
Mm.
that's part of what I really loved about the book too, is your mentioning of the animals and the ancient culture,
Mm.
the people of Finland who know how to winter well. Can you talk to us about, those cultures and those elements that you brought into the book and why that was important to you?
Yeah, so when I was researching the book, I wanted to look at cultures that were intimate with proper hard winters. I mean, where I live in the UK, we occasionally get a bit of snow, and that's about as bad as it gets. But I feel like the people who are used to getting cut off every winter, who live in the far north, know something about how to survive personal winters as well. So I spoke to people from Norway, Finland, Sweden, Iceland, and just asked them how they think about it. And what they all said was that they prepare very carefully. They always have winter in mind. So even in midsummer, they're busy stocking up food, filling their freezers with lovely things to eat. Like if someone drops around your house in winter in Finland, you must give them some cake because they've come a long way in the cold. I loved that. I thought that was very hospitable.
Hmm.
But what I think what's really important, because we talk a lot about Scandinavia and how they love coziness and all of that kind of thing, but they actually hate the snow. They do not enjoy the snow. They know that it's awful. They all have stories of like friends they've lost who've gone out in a cold night and died. I mean, or who've had terrible car accidents, or people who've become incredibly depressed over the winter. And so all of that beautiful culture of hygge and making the house beautiful and filling everything with candles and like getting together as a family, that's not coming necessarily from a place of optimism. It's coming from a place of survival and
Mm.
knowing that to stay happy and to stay afloat, you absolutely must do all you can to make life nice. Like you feather your bed because the outside is cold, not because everything's perfect. And it comes from almost quite like a pessimistic place. We must keep working towards our happiness because sadness is always so very close. And I think that that has huge insight for us, that we are allowed to keep cheering ourselves up, actually, to keep deliberately making ourselves feel comfortable, cozy, coddled, looked after, cared for. We're allowed to take care, really. And I like, the thing that interested me most was the culture of the sauna, or the sauna. You have to call it the sauna if you're gonna go Scandi. And now I hate saunas. I'm not good in the heat at all. I'm a true cold lover. Um, I took a sauna when I was researching the book and fainted cold out on the floor, which I wrote about in the book.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I think if you're more accustomed to it, maybe you're better at surviving in it. But they talk about how the sauna is not just like a health club thing like we see it, that might give your face a nice glow or whatever. But actually it's a space where families sit together in peace and talk and listen, and it brings about this very kind of calm state of mind. It kind of invites contemplation, relaxation, this sense of almost dreaminess. And that's vital to their culture. That feels like a vital part of their existence, because it's makes a part of the day special that would
Yeah.
otherwise feel very dead in the middle of winter. And I think that's really beautiful. Like, you don't have to install a sauna to do that necessarily, but I think we can make those very deliberate, conscious spaces that are about creating happiness, and coziness and warmth without installing the full charcoal burner. Although
Well,
that is tempting.
I know. Well, especially too as we get into real deal winter here, at least in the
Mm,
States. I mean, I'm in Atlanta,
yeah.
so it's not serious. Just like
Okay.
you in the UK, it gets a little chilly, but that's it.
Yeah.
But as I was thinking when you were saying like coddling ourselves, comforting ourselves, even if you're a woman listening to this right now, you don't have a family, but we still need that. We still need
Mm,
that check-in. And that was something that I really got from the book, was these themes of self-awareness and of contemplation kept coming up again and again. And it's like
Mm.
people who don't do that, who don't take the time to really see what's going on inside, it's like the message hits you, it whispers, and then it knocks you, and then it
Mm.
really gets you. So
Yeah. Yeah. If you can tune into it early, then you can save yourself quite a lot of pain, I think. I think most of us wait until any situation becomes urgent before we attend to it.
yeah.
And by then, we've often been knocked off our feet already. And then it takes a long time to get back up again. Whereas actually, if we can learn to tune in and to be aware of what's happening for us, on a very basic level, how we're feeling physically and mentally, what situations are boiling in the background that maybe we don't want to pay attention to, then actually we can deal with them. We can learn to be ready for them. It doesn't stop stuff coming from left field, like, a pandemic, for example.
Right.
But it does mean that we know where we are when all of that comes. And I think we spend a lot of time not necessarily being, as you say, very self-aware. And even if we are, we don't think that we should really deal with it because it seems indulgent. And it's
Mm.
not indulgent in any way. It's not heroic to go marching on when you're suffering.
Yeah. Where do you draw the line though? Because I so agree with you about that. We do
Mm,
need to stop and slow down. But also there's this other push to continue to be strong, to weather the winter, to make
mm,
it as because we're going to go through it no matter what.
yeah.
How do you draw the line, even personally for yourself, between relaxing into it, fully
Mm,
embodying it, and okay, I'm going to pull myself up. I'm going to get through this.
yeah. I mean, there's always stuff that you have to do, and I think actually we ask the wrong questions in a way because we assume that if we start to look after ourselves, we'll stop taking action and we'll stop doing the right thing. And actually, doing the stuff that has to be done is what we do. It's hard to stop doing that. It's hard to actually hold back on doing more than we need to do. Like quite often we're looking after our families, but we're also trying to save the family next door as well and make sure that somebody else has got dinner, or, checking in on a friend that hasn't spoken to us for 20 years, but we're really worried about them. So actually, I think the opposite's true, like with the where do you draw the line, which is where are you going to draw the line between all of that helping and that massive effort of salvation that we seem to be constantly indulging in, and saying instead, I'm going to take 20 minutes, and it doesn't have to be a lot. I mean, we've had a tough time this autumn in my family. Like everyone's been very, very stressed. There's been lots of people struggling who I've needed to personally look after, and that is my responsibility, no doubt. But within that, I've made sure that I just take some time, and for me that's going out for a swim, that's making time to read a book for a while, it's actually sitting looking at a film on my laptop for an hour if I can get away with it, or it might be going to bed early to make sure I've had enough sleep.
Mm.
Like, that the other stuff can wait. Like my house does not have to be full of homemade Christmas decorations this Christmas. It is okay for me to buy a cake from the store rather than bake it myself. It's okay for me not to paint my toenails all winter while they're in heavy socks anywhere. Nobody's going to see them. Like all of that does not have to happen. Like that's in service to the outside world and what they think of me. What I need sometimes is a hot bath on my own for half an hour with nobody bothering me. And when I've had that hot bath, I come out a better person.
Hmm.
I can do the stuff that I need to do, but also I get perspective about how much I'm often running myself into the ground doing stuff that nobody actually needs me to do, but that I do out of guilt and stress and overwhelm in the first place. Mm.
I love it. I love it. Just reading your work, like it always seems like you've had this wider sense of perspective and self-awareness. I mean, you talk about, when you were 17 going through, your first
Mm.
winter or a significant one. Do you think
Mm.
it's because you've always been extra sensitive to life, to yourself, that you've been able to really express it through your writing and through your work?
Yeah, I mean, my mental health was quite poor when I was a teenager. And after I had my really big breakdown when I was 17, when I just couldn't function for 6 months, I think I remember hitting rock bottom within that. There was definitely a moment where I thought, actually, I don't think I can go any lower. And oh, I'm still here. And okay, so what are the steps? What are the steps up? And it was a really deliberate, conscious thought. And ever since then, I've been thinking very hard about how to make life work, just work, like not like how to make life perfect, not how to be a trillionaire and have a private jet. Like that's never been my concern. My concern has been, how do I survive this better? How do I learn to be happy and to be on an even keel? And if you're a person that has to ask those questions, like you'll know how important they are. Not everybody has to ask those questions, but I did. And it took me a long time to get that right. Still, like I still had other dips, you know, it wasn't like I sat there and figured it all out. But by my, you know, advanced years now, 43 of them, I've got the hang of it more, you know. It's really true, I've got the hang of it. I'm not as vulnerable to those dips because I have really studied how to cope the best I can. I mean, big things for me are like meditation, getting into nature, walking. They're like my three things that I need to make sure that I'm okay, you know.
Yeah.
um and I yeah, that's about making, all of it's about making space, all
Yeah.
of it. Mm.
Absolutely. So do you have like a list? Okay, I have to do these things today, first thing in the morning. Because I do. Like
Yeah.
I now I call it my battle list. Like do this, 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 and I know I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be good for the day, or at
Oh,
least.
that's really interesting. Yeah, I think I'm actually more instinctive about it than that. Like I'm always looking for little moments to drop out. Like that feels like my rebellion, I think. But I know that feeling when I need it. So I mean I walk every day. So maybe that's part of my battle list. I got a dog last year and one of the reasons was that I never wanted to again have my walk bumped. Like if I've got a dog, I have
Mm,
to walk every day. No one can take my
have
walk
to do
away.
it. Yeah.
Because the truth is they'll feel much more sorry for the dog than they'd feel for me. I needed the walk too. um, but there we go. The dog needs her walk, right?
Mm,
And I like, on top of that, I check in with myself. I find ways to check in. And you can only do that if you fall silent for a while. I think we're often making so much noise all the time that we don't make that moment. And it only has to be short, where you listen to the inside of your head and find out what you're feeling and how tired you are, or how
mm,
overexcited you are. Like overexcitement is just as bad as tiredness, I think, sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah, I do. I
Absolutely.
make space. Yeah. Mm.
When you're with other people and, obviously as a very sensitive person, empathetic person, it's easy for us to pick up on other people's energies. Are you able
Mm.
to decipher what's your energy versus what's theirs and kind of cleanse that out so that you're really just coming from an authentic place?
That's hard for me because I'm autistic. I like autistic women are very commonly are very absorbent of other people's feelings. So we find it hard not only kind of absorb how people are, like people's level of energy, but also to mimic that back. Like
Hmm.
that's how we relate. And so I have to be very boundaried actually about how I spend time with, like, some people are more stressy than others, I think
Oh,
it's probably
yeah.
fair to say.
Yeah.
And I do have to be really careful. Like I've cut some people out of my life who would overwhelm me to the extent that I would develop a headache after an hour
Hmm.
of time with them. I've had to walk away from those people. But also, like, even in my working life, because I work freelance, I will often cut out contracts that are with people who think every email's urgent and
Hmm.
are always asking for stuff to be done at last minute. Like that's how they work. I can't. I mean, I can work like that, but I don't want to work like that. And so actually, I'm very, very careful about it. And like on a momentary basis as well, when I'm with people who are having a momentary dip, I will just do my best to notice what
Mm.
their stuff is that they're bringing into the room, because I think the problem comes when you don't really notice and you've absorbed
Yeah.
it before you can think to say, no, I'm here and they're there, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So it's more about being mindful, I think. But I am conscious about how much time I spend with other people as well, because I get very exhausted if I spend a lot of time with others, whoever they are and whatever their levels are. So solitude is really important for me, actually.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Probably why walking is such like a beautiful thing for you too,
Mm.
because you're still with others, you're out in nature, you're getting the sun, but you are alone essentially with your thoughts, with your body, with your
Yeah.
movement, with your breath.
I don't really like to walk with other people, actually, I have to say.
I don't either.
When people find out I walk quite, they quite often say, will you walk with me? Like, probably not. No. I
That's
don't
so
want to
funny.
talk.
Right. I need to process. I want to talk to myself. I
So
love it.
my last book was about me discovering I was autistic in my late 30s, and it happened while I was walking the Southwest Coast Path, which is this incredibly beautiful rugged path in Devon and Cornwall and Dorset in England. And it's really wild, it's really difficult, it's really remote. Like, if you get fed up halfway through a walk, you're going to have to walk 5 miles to get to the nearest village, whatever
Oh my
happens. Like,
goodness.
no one can come and rescue you. And that, what I learned during that time, because I'd never walked to that extent before, but what I really learned was that there's this point after about 3 hours of hard walking when your brain just becomes this gloriously empty space, and you're not even really conscious. I think at that point, I think it's probably like your blood glucose levels have dropped so low that you haven't got the energy to think anymore. That's the place where huge revelations happen that kind of land on you and feel like there was nothing that came before them. It feels like boom, they've just dropped into your head. And I want to make as much space for that as possible, and walking does that for me. But you have to be walking alone, because if you're trying to entertain someone else next to you and be like interesting, you're missing out on this absolute, space for all of the big things in life to arrive.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
I need a long walk. I think that's what I'm saying, really. I could
I
do with
think
one of
that
those
was
right
the
now.
result of this conversation today.
I'm going to have a walk this weekend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll be with you in spirit there.
Yeah, that's good. And
Um,
that's all we need.
I know, right? Over there. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're almost out of time. I could talk to you for so long, but
I know, it's such an interesting conversation.
I know. I love your work. I love your writing. If there were anything that you would want to leave with the listener, with the reader who's going to pick up this book, to take away the mother, what would that be?
Oh, do it your way. I think that's taken me all my life to realize that every time I sought advice on how I should do things, I ended up resenting it, and it felt heavy on me. And that actually, whenever I do stuff my way, and sometimes that's found by trial and error, like it's okay to get that a bit wrong, that I've been much happier. And I really wish I'd learnt that when I was younger. I really wish I'd truly absorbed the message that I'm able and competent to figure stuff out for myself, and that there's no one system that's right for everybody. I don't think we learn that until we're older, do we? Some people never do.
Until we've passed out in the sauna.
Yeah, I learned that way. But that comes when you stop trying to be a good girl, I think, as well.
Yes. I love that. Yeah, I love this conversation, because if anything, that I've gotten from the book and from you and just how you live your life is you did it this way. You did it the way that everyone wanted you to do it, and you rocked it. You were amazing.
I didn't always rock it first time though, okay?
I know, but then you were like, you know what? This is not going to work for me. Like, you are a true feminist in that way, fully embodied in yourself. Like, I just think that that's so admirable. And I just love talking to women like you because of that.
Yeah. And I think there's loads of us out there that are ready to not be good girls and to, not do as we're told, and to make trouble. And I really I love it when I see women making trouble in the world, like really good trouble.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing here, I think.
Yeah. And then we're more of ourselves, we're there for our work, for our children, for life, much more
I
so than before.
And like, what do we want to teach our children after all? Do we want them to go on the same track that loads of us followed, and to have that revelation that we do later? I want my son to know that he can drop out of whatever the hell he wants to drop out of until he finds the right thing. Like, I'm never going to force him into a funny little mold that in my brain works.
Yeah.
He needs to know that he can make mistakes, and
Abs-
that the big skill in life is learning that you've made the mistake and walking away, rather than sticking with the mistake that feels so awkward.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for those words. Thank you for that lesson. Katherine, your book is Wintering. It's out now. I can't wait for the movie when that comes out, because it needs to be one.
Who'll play me?
Oh, I don't know. Let's think about that. Thank you so much for your work and your light, and just everything that you're putting out into the world. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been lovely talking to you on your lovely podcast.
Oh, likewise.